And in this video, we're going to take a look at the culmination of events which led up to the deaths of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe. Could this almost perfect storm of events have created a motive for murder in terms of Michael Steele and Jack Wombs?
Hello. Hello, police. Yeah, what's the problem, sir? We just drove down our farm track. Yeah. Go and feed our pheasants. We come across a Range Rover with 3 people in it. Yeah. It appears that they're dead. I don't know what's happening. Blood in the motor all over them.
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Okay, now this video is going to be a little bit different compared to what we would do normally. It's going to be a little bit more off the cuff, so to speak. And really it's just come about from an idea I had this morning regarding the motive for these murders, the motive for the murders of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe. Now this is a big point for a lot of people who look into this case. Many people who have read, the police statements or even just the general story behind the deaths of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe. Many people will say, well, really, was there a strong enough motive? Was there a strong enough motive there for Steele to want Tucker, Tate and Rolfe killed? And for a lot of people, the motive just simply isn't there, or it simply isn't strong enough to warrant the execution of these 3 individuals. Now, it was put forward in court really that the bad blood, the tension, the arguments, and I guess what led ultimately to the demise of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe started with the dud cannabis deal. Now, if it's to be believed, this is best demonstrated in the statement from Donna Jaggers, where she states the following. Very quickly, they started receiving phone calls telling them that the cannabis was very poor quality. I learnt through Craig that Tate and Tucker were very agitated because Steele during this time was trying to push the price that he wanted up. In effect, this was eating into their personal profit from the deal. They contacted Steele and told him they wanted their money back because the cannabis was rubbish. Steele didn't want to take it back. Tate and Tucker then started putting real pressure on Steele to recover the money. By pressure, I mean through intimidation. I cannot say exactly what they did because I do not know. But I recall hearing conversations they had with Steele on the phone where they were ranting and raving at one another and pacing up and down. I understand that Steele finally agreed to return the cannabis and get their money back for them. Tate, in a fit of temper about the whole affair, smashed each slab before it was returned. Steele had told them that a parcel the same size had been picked up by mistake, and that's how the problem had come about. I'm not certain, but I think that on this occasion, Steele had to collect the cannabis from Tucker's home address in order to return it. Steele arranged to hand the money back to them on the continent. He was going to return the goods to his suppliers and then take the money to a pre-arranged location where he was to meet Craig, Tucker and Tate. So at this point in time, I think it's fair to say that there would have at least been some, friction or ill feeling between Tucker, Tate and Rolfe and Michael Steele. Where this also gets a little bit deeper for Michael Steele is the fact that he was almost caught bringing in that exact load from Holland. Now, this is something that I don't believe had happened up until this point after his release from prison, after he had gone back to smuggling or his smuggling ways with Jack Wombs. So in the back of Michael Steele's mind there has to be this idea that someone had possibly tipped them off. That someone had possibly tipped them off that they were going to be at a certain place, they were bringing stuff over. And this would have been, a little bit of a concern for Michael Steele. And interestingly, it's put forward that this coincided with Pat Tate smashing up Tony Tucker's Porsche when he was drunk or high on drugs, whichever it was. He got put in the cells, and when he came out and Craig Rolfe and Donna Jaggers picked him up in the Range Rover, I believe it was, Tate already knew that Steele had been arrested or had been taken in for questioning. He basically he knew that he'd been pulled in, that he'd been caught almost with this gear. And the first thing that Tate did was call up Jackie Street to see if the gear was safe. And I think in the back of Michael Steele's mind was, how exactly did Tate know that? Tate was in prison at the time, not in prison, but he was in custody at the time. How did Tate know that Michael Steele had nearly been caught? So there would have been a little bit of distrust there building. We have, that instance, then we have it all going wrong, consequently with the actual load itself being a load of rubbish. You can imagine the tension between these three individuals and Michael Steele, the anger, the cross words being spoken on the phone, the threats of violence or whatever it is. We need our money back. I've got investors. They're going to do this. And then to top it all off, Tate smashes a whole load of stuff before it's sent back. Now, still at this point, I don't believe that we have a pure motive for murder or enough of a motive for murder. We've got to remember that this is a very, very incredibly serious event. This is life-changing. Your chances of actually getting away with murder are incredibly slim. So what else could have caused this? Then I think we need to look, I guess, at the next big event. It's almost like a perfect storm. This is how I'm envisioning it in my mind, if there is a real motive for the murder here. Because then we have the death of Leah Betts on the 16th of November 1995. I can't remember how old I was, 9 or 10 at the time. But even I remember it being all over the news, all over the newspapers, every front page, every headline news bulletin on the TV. And this might sound weird, but it's actually the thing that stopped me ever taking drugs. Being that young and seeing this person with tubes hanging out of them left, right and centre and, look at what drugs do, all this sort of stuff. I never ever pursued drugs. And it sounds a bit pathetic, possibly, but I never pursued it because of what was drilled into me at such a young age of this is what can happen, and albeit it turned out it wasn't actually the drug in the end that killed her, but I always remember it having a massive effect on me, as a child. So this just goes to show how mainstream this event was. This was everywhere, as I say, every newspaper article, every TV bulletin, probably on the radio as well. It was really drilled into people that there's this massive issue, this massive crisis, this danger that was lurking in the clubs during that time period. And can you imagine the pressure that Tucker, Tate and Rolfe felt during this time period? Not just Tucker, Tate and Rolfe, but Michael Steele. Because in the back of Steele's mind there, we've got this sort of ill feeling, this distrust between these individuals now, I guess, beginning to brew. What happens when Tucker or Tate get pulled in by the police? What happens when they begin questioning these individuals, looking into their contacts, their associates? Would it be the case at this point that because we don't have this, I guess, close relationship, we're not talking about Michael Steele and Jack Womes here, we're talking about three incredibly volatile individuals and Michael Steele. Michael Steele, who likes to lay low, he likes to keep his operation as smooth as possible. And now we have these three individuals who are now embroiled in this massive media frenzy. I think the level of unrest during this time period is, I guess, best described by a very short paragraph in the statement from Donna Garwood's brother. Now, Donna Garwood was the then teenage mistress of Tony Tucker before he died, and it's in her brother's statement that he mentions the following. I remember Donna told me once that Pat Tate had come out of prison. She said, he's only been out 5 weeks. She said that since Pat had come out, Tony had become worried about something. He had taken a bit of a low profile. He wasn't himself. Donna said he started staying in with her a lot and Tony was a bit jumpy. Donna said she thought Pat had done something which reflected on Tony, but she didn't say what. Now this may not be, alluding to the Leah Betts situation. This may have something to do with it, obviously, the fact that Tucker is laying low, he's staying in, he's a bit jumpy. There were places that were getting raided. Also remember that I think it was Tate's flat got raided for drugs. The police knew. The police had a very good idea where these drugs had come from. And I guess what I wonder in the back of my mind here is, did Michael Steele see the writing on the wall here? Tate's flat's getting raided. Tucker runs all these doormen. They know exactly who supplied these tablets. What exactly happens at that point then when Tony Tucker or Pat Tate get arrested? Was Steele actually fearful for his own operation? Was this simply a case of self-preservation for Michael Steele? We also have the situation with Sarah Saunders, someone who he had become close with. The fact that Tate during this time period seemed to be completely out of control, aggressive, volatile, violent. It was quite clear that Michael Steele wasn't going to be able to deal with these three individuals again, at least in terms of supplying them with product. We have the Leah Betts situation, the fact that this other deal had fallen through, all the hassle that Steele had to go to in order to get the money returned, the threats. Were they simply forgotten, brushed under the carpet? Maybe they were. But then the Leah Betts situation occurred and everything started to come on top once again. Now, an alternative way of viewing everything I've just said and the motive for the murders of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe is really what I said earlier about just how high profile this death of Leah Betts actually was. Now, there's talk that Tucker, Tate and Rolfe were under surveillance leading up to their murder. And, the heat was really on these three individuals during that time period, December the 6th, 1995. Would this really be the wisest time to execute these three individuals, especially when they're known to the police? There's a high possibility that they were under police surveillance. Is this something that would be taken into consideration by someone like Michael Steele? Would you really, concoct a plan to execute these people because of the heat that was on them? Surely that makes this all the more dangerous. One thing I have been clear on, in terms of my own personal viewpoint regarding who is responsible for the deaths of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe, is that I don't believe that Steele and Womes were the two individuals who actually pulled the trigger on the evening of December the 6th. Equally, I also find it quite difficult to eliminate any involvement at all from these two individuals. Did they have some part to play in getting Tucker, Tate and Rolfe down the lane? And what exactly was Darren Nichols' part in all of this? Do let me know your own thoughts and feelings in the comments section below, whether you feel that this would be a motive for murder. Do you believe that there simply was too much heat on Tucker, Tate and Rolfe during this time period for someone like Michael Steele to even consider a triple murder? Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you all again in the next video. Take care. Cheers.